a glorious day in Berkeley. We're expecting some rain hopefully tomorrow. Show that drought who's boss. Us. Okay, settle down. Attendance has already dropped by 50%. This is pretty good. You'll do well, they won't. How do I get into the class? Who's in? If you check Fairfax this morning, if you're in, you're in. Everybody except for 2 people on the wait list got into the class, which I think is pretty exciting. For the 2 of you, you can either hang on and see if anybody drops, because I start cracking terrible jokes, even worse ones than I've done over the past 2 lectures, and they drop voluntarily, or people decide that they like 108 better and they move over there. But if you're in, welcome. If you're on the wait list to the discussion section, I'm not even going to answer that question, okay? Go find a discussion section that has room and sign up for that and go to any discussion section you want. Fiona, she'd love to have you. Walter, right? The more the merrier. Dan, I know, the more the merrier. So go to multiples. All right. So I have this very exciting new technology. It's called a Microsoft Surface. I practiced all weekend drawing on it. I'm really good at it now. And what does it do? It doesn't freaking hook up to the damn thing, excuse my French. So I need another adapter, because apparently the mini VGA port that Apple uses is different than the mini VGA port that Microsoft uses, so I'll have this going next time. So I'm sorry, I'm still going to draw on the board today, but as of next time, we'll do live digital drawing, and you can watch me on iTunes U and listen to me. All right? So, questions? None? I like it best that way, frankly. I'd be lying to you if I said I love lots of dialogue about wait lists. So just quickly to see where we are, all right? Last time I left lecture and somebody walked with me. I love it when people walk with me after lecture and ask me questions. Much less boring than walking by myself. So we did 2 things last time. We made some assumptions about consumers, and we made some assumptions about preferences. The first thing we assumed is that consumers do have preferences that guide their decisions. So you have tastes, right? You like some things better than others. Consumers face scarcity. Granted, this is not true for everybody, but all of us only have 24 hours in a day. While some of us may not have income scarcity, all of us do have time scarcity. So we'll assume that at some point, right? What's the airplane? There's a song about it. The G6, G9, they're like 19. G6, is that what it is? How do you guys know this? I mean, yeah. So there's a private airplane that costs like $20 million. Even if you're infinitely rich at some point, you're running out of money because you've got an airplane at every one of your 400 houses. And what I'm going to argue is that consumers try to make themselves as well off as possible in this world of scarcity. This is true for most of us. This is not true for all of us. There are certainly some settings where individuals make choices that make them worse off. They don't fit into this framework, all right? We can talk about how you can make them fit into this framework, but not right now. I'm going to make some assumptions about your preferences. I'm going to assume that they're complete. That means you can rank any bundle, right? I like 2 units of good A better than 1 unit of good B, or I'm indifferent between the 2, but you can tell me which things you like better than others, or whether you're indifferent between them. We're going to assume that preferences are transitive. If A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then automatically A has to be preferred to C, all right? There's no weirdness here. And more is better, which is sometimes called non-satiation. That means the more of something, the happier you are. This doesn't necessarily mean that if I give you 700,000 pounds of chocolate, the consumption of that chocolate makes you better off, but you could hand that chocolate over to others or convert it through trade into other goods and consume more of these other goods. But more is weakly preferred to better. So last time, we did this nice little experiment with Hugs and Reese's. There's no chocolate today, sorry. Where we traced out the preferences of one of your colleagues, and then I slapped up this table. Those were preferences of Max many years ago, where we essentially said, Max is indifferent between having 5 of each, 6 Hugs, 3 Reese's, or 8 Reese's and 4 Hugs. He's also indifferent between having 3 each, or 4 Hugs, 2 Reese's, or 5 Reese's and 2 Hugs. Clearly, he likes these 3 bundles that he's indifferent between better than these 3 bundles that he's indifferent between, because these ones here just have more stuff in them than these. And then we have a third set of bundles. I changed something here. This on the slide last time was a 7-7, which makes the drawing look weird, so I changed this to a 6-7. You may want to change that in your notes. But there's 6-7. He's indifferent between having 6 Hugs, 7 Reese's, 8 Hugs, 5 Reese's, or 10 Reese's, and 5 Hugs. This is, of course, the most preferred set of bundles, since there's so much more in there than in these other 2 bundles. So most happy here. Typos everywhere. I'm trying to make my slides better, and I'm screwing them up, right? So not so happy A, medium happy B, and very happy. This is obviously supposed to be a C, not an A, right? So 9 bundles, indifferent between these 3, indifferent between these 3, indifferent between these 3, but this most preferred, this second most preferred, this least preferred. Now, who here likes tables? No accountants in this room, okay? I like graphs much better. So if we graphically represent this, for those of you who have Mac, there's a nice program called OmniGraph Sketcher. It's freeware that allows you to draw pretty graphs like this. But all I did here is I took the bundles, right? The first 3 here, let's start with this 5, 5, 6, 3, 4, 8, and I plotted them on y-axis Reese's, x-axis Hershey's, always, and then connected the 3 points, right? So what I'm saying is I'm indifferent between this point, and this point here. These are bundles. So since I'm indifferent between the 3, and I'm just plotting out a curve here, since I could have played this experiment continuously instead of discretely like I did last time, what I've got here is a curve of bundles where I'm indifferent between all the bundles on that curve. Well, a curve that contains bundles that I'm indifferent between, a good name for that curve would clearly be the indifference curve, all right? So we're going to call these things, which are simply in good space, Reese's and Hershey's, curves of bundles that we're indifferent between, we're going to call these indifference curves. The lowest indifference curve is A, the second lowest indifference curve is B, and the third lowest or highest indifference curve here is C. So all this does here is it maps the bundles from my previous table, which is based on an experiment I did with one of your colleagues, into a graph. And the only thing we've learned last time is I'm indifferent between bundles on the same graph. Okay, so let's think about these for a second here. I said point 1 already. So any bundles that I can graph on a graph or write down in a table that I'm indifferent in between, they're on the same indifference curve, right, by design. Now the nice thing about indifference curves is that the types of indifference curves I'm going to allow you to draw, the ones I'm not going to allow you to draw, I'm going to call the police on you, just campus police, but they're just as scary as regular police, right? But the point here is we're going to draw certain types of indifference curves that reflect complete, transitive, and non-satiable preferences. Non-satiable is just more is better. So I'm going to maintain throughout this entire course, and you will push back and you will come up with scenarios on your exams where things go weird, but I'm going to argue every time things go weird, you have preferences that are either not complete, not transitive, or or they're satiable, okay? So those are the 3 assumptions I'm going to maintain on preferences, and I'm about to show you what this means for individual indifference curves. So the first thing we already talked a little bit about last time, and I so wish I could draw on this beautiful Surface tablet in color. I can draw dashed lines, different thickness, I can highlight, but whatever. Okay, Hershey's Rhesus. All right? So if I draw my three indifference curves, they look something like this. This here's indifference curve 1, indifference curve 2, indifference curve 3. I can pick a point here. Let's pick this bundle A, this bundle B, and this bundle C here. Okay? A here, let's look at the distance, is this far away from the origin. B is a little bit closer to the origin. And C is really far away from the origin. Okay, who here, let's take a little vote. Who here thinks that the following preference ranking is the one that we're going by? C, A, B. Okay, so who here thinks that C is preferred to B is preferred to A? Don't be shy. That's right. Who here thinks that the second one is true? C is preferred to A is preferred to B. Nobody dares to admit it because I already told you the answer is wrong. All right? The point here that is really important to realize is what you prefer more in terms of bundles are bundles that are further away from the origin on a single line coming out of the origin. All right? It is not about absolute distance from the origin because A is further away from the origin. Origin is 0, 0. It's further away from the origin than B. So if you're going by that measure, whoever is further away from the origin should be more preferred. A should be preferred to B. But that's not how it goes. So to show this, it's pretty simple. I'm just going to erase these hideous chalk lines. There's dust involved, not on my surface. In order to convince yourself of this, pick 3 points on a straight line coming out of the origin. Okay, I'm just going to pick a line that goes through B, but you could pick any line. Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to call this A prime, and I'm calling this C prime. A and A prime are on the same indifference curve, right? So these two are on the same indifference curve. That might mean I'm indifferent between A and A prime. C and C prime are on the same indifference curve. So I am going to be indifferent between C and C prime. So the easiest way to convince yourself that A is less preferred relative to B, and C is is more preferred relative to B is just to do the following. A, if you're thinking about a map, A is southwest of B, or B is what Boston is to San Diego, right? What's true for B? Do I have more Reese's than at A? Yeah, right? So I'm further north at B than I am at A, so I have more Reese's. Do I have more Hershey's than at A? Yeah, I have more of both goods. So by more is better, I have more of both goods at B than I have at A, so I must prefer B to A, all right? Same thing goes, again, for C prime and B, right? At B, I have fewer Hershey's because I'm to the left of C prime, and I have fewer Reese's because I'm south of C prime. So at B, I have fewer goods, fewer both commodities than I have at C prime, so I prefer C prime to B. Now, since I can rank C prime, B, and A prime, I can all of a sudden also rank C, B, and A, right? Even though A is, you've actually got more Hershey's at A than you have at B, but you have fewer Reese's at A than you have at B, so this more is better thing doesn't really work. But since you're indifferent between an A and A prime, right, they're on the same indifference curve, and you know you prefer B to A prime by more is better, since you're indifferent between these two, and you know A prime is not preferred to B, you know that B is preferred to A prime, and since you're indifferent between A prime and A, B is also automatically preferred to A. So I'm going to great lengths here to convince you that you shouldn't measure absolute distance in space here, but what you should do is simply draw any line on from the origin through this indifference map, and you know that bundles on indifference curves that are closer to the origin along a given ray are less preferred than ones on indifference curves further out. All right? So the further you move along this ray, when you get to these indifference curves, the more preferred they are, the further out you are along a given ray. The second important point here is, well, Max, that looks really cute. Actually, that looks terrible. It's not. It's analog. It's got dust. It's not digitally drawn. Chalk. What is this? But the question you ask is, well, you draw this nice picture, Max. Again, Hershey's and Reese's. Always label your axes. I take a point off for any unlabeled axis anywhere. I don't care what you're drawing. Don't make me guess. Label your axes, okay? So Reese's, Hershey's. Let's draw the same indifference curves. Why these look the way they look right now, I will tell you in a little bit. Well, Max, I grew up in Berkeley. In Berkeley, we don't really follow the laws of economics so closely, right? So in fact, you draw these nice indifference curves here, but I have, for my whole life, consumed this bundle right here. You can't handle this bundle, right? There's no indifference curves through it, hence, you can't rank it. I will not fall into your system. Well, to that I say, these indifference curves are arbitrary, right? I could pick any bundle, right? Let this be 4, 4, and play the same experiment with our friend from last time that we did last time, but starting at 4, 4. So the point here is, there is an indifference curve through every possible bundle. Well, Max, you with your blunt chalk. Here is a bundle. I bet you can't draw an indifference curve through that. Yeah, whatever. I went to public schools my whole life. There is nothing I can't do. All right. How about this one? If you have tough things to draw, put your hand behind your back, and you can draw about anything. Mark Machina taught me that. Okay. But the point I'm trying to make here, any bundle on here has an indifference curve going through it. It's a complete mapping. Completeness didn't say I can only rank 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3, but you can, if I give you any bundle possible, you can tell me how that compares in terms of your liking of that bundle relative to any other bundle. So there's an indifference curve through each possible bundle, and where that comes from mathematically, we'll start seeing at the end of this lecture. It has to do with hiking, but that'll be very clear. So indifference curve through each possible bundle, and the question we want to ask now, well, Max, does this mean anything goes in terms of indifference curve? You draw these nice sort of J-shaped indifference curves here. They look real nice. But can I draw indifference curves like the Harry Potter indifference curve, for example? Does this exist, right? Or can I draw indifference curves that look like this, or like this, or like this? What do your assumptions on preferences actually rule out? Well, it turns out a number of things, all right? So let's go through my 3 most popular violations of the rules of indifference curves that I've experienced in this class. I've seen it all, I think. People draw things. I've seen the Harry Potter indifference curve, by the way. So this is just to give you some space to draw, and then if I had my surface, I would have digitally drawn on here. It would have been beautiful, but So bad indifference curves. What do bad indifference curves look like? By bad indifference curve, maybe my choice of word here isn't optimal, but what I mean by bad indifference curve here are indifference curves that violate the assumptions and preferences that I've made, meaning indifference curves that violate transitivity, completeness, and more is better. So there's 3 types of indifference curves that I don't ever want to see on an exam problem set or when you become president and you draw stuff in your State of the Union address, right? You have a little chalkboard and you're going to draw indifference curves. Very effective communication technology. But the point here is indifference curves cannot cross, and I'll show you why in a second. They have to be nice and thin. They can't be thick and chunky, so they have to be like angel hair pasta, not like the fancy stuff you get homemade for $42 at restaurants now. And indifference curves cannot be upward sloping. They have to be nice and downward sloping, which implies that you have some willingness to trade off between 2 goods. So this is just a sort of overview. Let's pick these apart, and let me show you why indifference curves cannot cross, and what that means in terms of what violation of preferences, the assumptions of preferences that we've made. Okay. One piece of advice, and I've told the GSIs to tell you that in economics, when you draw stuff, paper is cheap, all right? Paper is a renewable resource if we managed our forests right, which we don't, but if we did, you should be using lots of paper in economics. Don't take your sheet of paper and do what I did here, sort of like draw these tiny little graphs with curves crossing in one color, and then you got it wrong and you scratch stuff out. For each graph, pull out a nice piece of paper, blank, take it in, this is landscape, I think, right? Draw some nice big axes and give yourself room to draw, right? It makes it much clearer what it is you're doing, and you'll understand much more than if you draw these tiny, terrible pictures. So why can't indifference curves cross? Bad indifference curve number 1. Hershey's, Reese's. This is midterm number 2 in the fantastic year of 2008. Somebody drew this. And I don't know if you guys remember the fairy tale Rumpelstiltskin, which in German is called Unterstützchen. I sort of turned into Rumpelstiltskin when I saw this, all right? Indifference curves cannot cross. You draw me a set of indifference curves on an exam, I don't care how right the rest of your answer is, I'm going to take off all the points for the entire question, even if it's just point A of the question. Never, ever do indifference curves cross. Let me show you why. Let's pick up bundle A. Let's pick up bundle B. And let's pick up bundle C. Okay, so what I've got here is, right, A and B, I'm indifferent between, okay? A and B, I'm indifferent between because both are on I2. I'm also indifferent between A and C, right? A and C, because both of these are on indifference curve 1. So since I'm indifferent between A and B, and I'm indifferent between A and C, by transitivity, right, I also have to be indifferent between B and C. This implies B and C by transitivity. Well, for this particular graph, let's again do the San Diego-Boston thing. At B, do I have more or fewer Reese's than at C? More. At B, do I have more or fewer Hershey's than at C? More. I have more of both, right? So by more is better, B has to be preferred to C by more is better, or non-satiation. And this is where the Harry Potter arrow comes in. Well, what these preferences imply is that I'm both indifferent between B and C, but I also prefer B to C. And that simply cannot be, right? You either have to be indifferent or you prefer one to the other, and this is a set of indifference curves where both is true. So maybe you guys are too old for Harry Potter because you don't laugh at Harry Potter jokes anymore. Okay? This just can't be. So if your preferences are transitive, complete, and display non-satiation, your indifference curves cannot cross. Since we assume those 3 properties of preferences, you may never in this course draw a set of indifference curves that cross ever, anywhere. I don't care if it looks like this. Right? If the entire action of your amazing answer to midterm 1's long question looks something like this, don't draw this. Right? And all the action of what you're talking about is right here, and then your pencil sort of slipped and you just weren't paying attention. I don't care about the Nobel Prize worthy work that's going on over here. All I see is this. It's like somebody who's really scared of spiders. Even in a 5-star hotel, all they see is the huntsman spider in the corner of the Ritz-Carlton somewhere, right? So all I see is crossing indifference curves. Don't do it, all right? And don't hate the GSIs when they take off all the points. I told them to. Okay, that was the first one. What was the second one? Indifference curves can't cross? They can't be thick. All right, you guys are paying attention. I like it a lot. So they can't be thick. What about thick indifference curves? What do those look like? They look something like this. By the way, can everybody see when I draw on this board? You guys, can you? Okay. Next time, it will be amazing. Maybe I'll even bring a little movie. A little animation of utility functions or something to show you how amazing this new technology is. Okay, what would a thick indifference curve look like? Right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. You actually don't even need to bother. This looks ridiculous. Well, I'm going to bother, because this is science. It's a social science, but still science in the title. Let me pick 2 bundles. How about bundle A, and how about bundle B?